Hey everyone, for episode 85 of the Rental Roundtable, we had on Zach Martin, the CEO of Big Truck Rental. Big Truck Rental started about 24 years ago. Zach's been with the company for about 9 years. He's been there growing it from 7 to over 60 people. He was VP of sales, became president. Last year became the CEO. Talked a lot about their growth, how they are in a market that's really underpenetrated in rental. About 3% of their market is using rental today, and how that's growing, and how they're really educating the market on rental needs. Talked about technology, both internally about how to be more efficient using automation, but also externally surfacing data to customers that are ultimately being very transparent and building trust with customers. And then talked a lot about people and culture. You can tell Zach has a very strong interest in people and building a culture, and the things they've used and done to make culture a competitive advantage in rental. So really fun episode with Zach. He's a Rental Roundtable listener, and I hope you guys enjoy. All right, everyone, welcome to the Rental Roundtable, episode number 85. We have on Zach Martin, the CEO of Big Truck Rental. Zach, welcome to the show today.
Yeah, thanks, Kyle. Looking forward to spending some time together today. And as I mentioned, you've done a great job with the podcast. So excited to be a part of it.
Yeah, so you heard about the podcast from listening to the podcast, and we were talking about your favorite episode, Joe Condript from United. That was the number one listened to episode last year. Brett Baker
Okay.
was number two. So I posted on my LinkedIn about the top 5 episodes. So sounds like you know Joe. So let's see how
Yeah.
this episode goes, and we can have some competitive rankings to see.
Yeah. Competing with Joe. I
Because
like it. Let's go.
yeah, it's a tough one to beat. He's number one spot right now. So it's a new year, 2026. You got to start from zero again. Sales
Okay.
quota start over, episode
That's
ranking
right.
start over. So let's see what we can do today.
That's right.
So Zach, first of all, tell me about your background. You're the CEO of Big Truck Rental. What is Big Truck Rental? How'd you get here today? Tell me about your story getting into rental.
Sure. I've been at BTR for 9 years. BTR is a private equity backed specialty rental business, heavily focused on waste and recycling and logistics markets. So think mainly frontline waste equipment and terminal tractors for the most part that makes up our fleet. But I started 9 years ago. The business was much smaller then. I started as VP of sales, took over as president in the summer of 2020, which was a fun time. And then I took over as CEO about a year ago. Business was founded 24 years ago by Scott Doles. And he's the chairman, still involved in the business, chairman of the board today. Prior
So
to BTR, I spent 13 years sales leadership, business development in the waste and recycling space for a container manufacturer, Rare Pacific Company.
so you've been the waste sort of industry sales roles. So you really just got into rental when you joined BTR. Is that right? About 9 years ago.
You got it.
Yeah. And what's been the transition like becoming CEO? Is that a way easier job or way harder job than being a salesperson with a quota to hit?
Um, I would say they all have their unique challenges, but
Yeah.
both are a ton of fun. When I took over as president in 20, or I should say when I started at BTR in 2016, we really only had 7 people on the team, and I was
Wow.
the VP of sales of North America. Had a big funny fancy title. We had one salesperson on the team at the time, and so it was a lot of going out and doing it and making it happen, which I really enjoyed doing. And then I've been fortunate to take over as president there in 20, and then as CEO here as of a year ago. I think what changes is just your vantage point on the business, just becoming more well-rounded in every aspect of the business, not just focused on top line, but are we growing it profitably? And I know we'll talk a little about later, but a huge focus on the people and the team and where we're heading. That has been what I've spent more time on. And I'd say transition from president to CEO is more about how do I take a step back from some of the
Mm.
day-to-day operations and just think long-term vision of the organization, where we're heading.
Yeah, I mean the whole idea of working on the business, not working in the business,
You
and
got it.
I struggle with that too. Like I started the company with one person, we have over 30 now, and people be like, "Kyle, do you want to join this meeting?" And it's like, "Yes, I do, but I'm actually not going to because like that's
Yes.
not my job, right?" You probably have to struggle with that too. When you started with 7 people, how many people do you guys have now?
We got about 60 folks.
Yeah, so 7 to 60, almost 10x increase that you've been there. You probably used to do every job in the company, and now like you're explicitly letting go. That's probably hard to let go of the reins and trust the team that you built.
Extremely challenging to do, but necessary. We have a great team, a great culture, and great folks that are out there making it happen every day. And so, while it is challenging, it is necessary because we want to continue developing folks and creating opportunities for them.
Do you feel like, stress levels, like, comparing as being a CEO of a 60-person company versus being VP of sales or a 7-person company? I mean, how has it changed? Because the reason I'm asking is I watched the video from Jeff Bezos, and he sort of said, like, as a CEO, you should be the least stressed person in the company because anytime you have a problem, you can delegate it away. And I was like, oh, that's an interesting view. And I guess if you have 100,000 employees and you're Jeff Bezos, it's easy to say that. I'm just curious for you, when you think about like just the responsibility you have is higher than you've ever had, probably in any career you've had. But do you feel like it's more stressful, less stressful, or about the same from sort of being, VP of sales of a 7-person company?
Sure. I feel like it's more stressful, so I answer a little differently
Yeah.
than Jeff Bezos.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I think so too. But that's why I don't think
To
Jeff's
me,
right, by the way.
yeah, to me, there's a personal aspect. You got a
Yeah.
business that's got 60 folks with a lot of folks that have been here making it happen every day to support our growth. And I care about each one of those folks individually, know them individually.
Hmm.
The ones that are here in Tampa, talk to them every single morning that I'm in the office. And so, yeah, I take it with great responsibility. The folks that we have on the team, and how do we provide them opportunities and for them to go beyond whatever they thought they could do in their career. And so I think that is something that is a great responsibility, but I really love and enjoy that responsibility.
Yeah, that's what I think the answer is. I think Jeff Bezos is somewhat retired and worth $100 billion. It's easy to say that in
Different
hindsight, you
scenario.
know? Yeah, yeah, exactly. Different scenario. So when you got into rental at BTR 9 years ago, what attracted you to the rental business model? What about rental? If you listen to the podcast, we talk about how rental gets in your blood. It's been 9 years.
Yes.
It's in your blood. It's in my blood. What sort of attracted you to it, and what's kept you here?
Yeah, good question. So I knew the founder, Scott Doles, and the president at the time, Jeannie Davis, and I had a relationship with them. And Big Truck was always really known in the industry for having a great reputation, a big brand, and making some things happen. And what I found was super attractive is that the market penetration in waste and recycling is extremely low. So compared to some
Mm,
other special rental businesses and folks that you will talk to that have higher rental penetration, you're talking rental penetration in waste and recycling of less than a few percent. 140
mm,
plus thousand on the road every day, and less than a few percent are even rented. And it was much smaller even at the time when I joined the company. So I viewed it as a real opportunity to join a group of people that I really enjoyed being around, with an opportunity to change the way an industry looks at asset ownership, and really have influence on the industry, and candidly have fun, like building like a startup business without the startup component, because Scott and the
yeah.
team had built a great business before I had joined. But that was what attracted me to the business.
What was Scott's initial thesis? You said what, 24 years ago, when he said,
Yeah.
"Hey, I'm going to start big truck rental, specialty rental, in the waste industry." Like, what sort of market opportunity did he see 24 years ago?
His vision, initially was, I'm going to rent these trucks to independently owned businesses that have truck down events. I know we'll talk a little bit about maybe safety and automation, but
Yeah.
the waste and recycling world is dangerous. We're trying to change that mentality through automation, but things do happen to pieces of equipment. So Scott was there for the candidly the oh shit moment, was something that he originally built the business on, and then it really expanded from there. And then what I would say is that when I joined the business in 16, still majority of our rentals were related to truck down events, and we
Mm,
really focused on how do we educate the market to leverage rental for other business reasons. And so
mm.
we've changed that paradigm. A lot of room to grow in terms of rental penetration, but now that's a small piece of the business. Now folks are leveraging rental for acquisitions or for contract starts or for capital prioritization and flexibility. And so we have been the driver of those reasons of educating the market on how they could leverage it. And that's been where he started it and where it's changed, over the last 9 years.
Do you have a sense of, in your niche, what the rental penetration percentage is? If you look at, like, general tool, heavy equipment, yeah, any job site, roughly 60% of equipment is rented on a job site, which is not as high as Europe and Asia, but it's growing 1% every year, which is pretty strong. We've talked to Jake Rockefeller at RigSource. They are over specialty. They're very much smaller than that, and they're educating the market on rental. Where are you guys at? I imagine you're probably below 60% number. Do you know
Oh,
where you guys are at?
three
Wait,
percent
3%. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, the waste space historically is I'm gonna own every asset that I have, frontline, spares, et cetera. And so the wave space hasn't gotten to that point where I'm eliminating spares completely, leveraging rental, for peaks in my
Yeah.
business. We were the first mover in the space. There are a few other folks out there that do it that are kind of pushing that same message, but a long way to go. So a lot of white space that's out there to get to any kind of those numbers.
Yeah, well, that should be encouraging, right, for you as you in
Yes,
other parts of the industry, the broader equipment industry have gotten there. 3%, do you know where it was at 9 years ago? Less than 3%, right?
it's
So it's
about one.
grown is it 1%? Okay, so it's you went from 1 to 3, but that's triple the
Yep,
revenue, right, opportunity. So and do you see that continuing to grow as the next 5 to
I
10
do.
years? Where do you think it gets to?
Yeah, listen. I think that it'll continue to move at a similar pace, and I don't see any reason in the next few years we can't double the
Mm.
penetration. Yeah,
Yeah, that's great. So your biggest sales objection is probably convincing people they don't need to own. You're not competing against other rental companies as often as like, hey, you don't need to actually own every single uh, asset in your fleet.
agreed. Yeah, it's not as much head to head as it is renting is still a foreign concept. Or I want to say we wrote an article probably 7 8 years ago that rent is no longer a 4 letter word in our wave space, and so I would say we're still on that mission. We're probably third inning of the ball game of
Yeah,
that occasion, but that's what it looks like on most of the times we're visiting with customers.
I like that. Rent is not a four letter word. No, what a 4 letter word is golf.
Yeah,
When I play golf, that's a 4 letter word.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
A long walk spoiled, as I call it. Uh, So, I'm interested in, like, so you're how do you actually grow that percentage, right? So like, for us, by the way, like, when people are switching rental softwares, our biggest competitor is actually not a other competitor. It's the fact that they have to go through a switching cost, and it's like the old way of doing things. You have to break that down. There's a better way of doing things.
Yeah,
I mean, what is your sales and marketing efforts? Is it really around educating the market on why rental is better? What messaging has resonated as you go
yeah.
to market with that?
First and foremost, it is educating on we've had a ton of success in growing this business over the last
Yeah.
24 years. And it's leveraging those examples of how folks have used our services to either grow their business or prioritize their capital and being able to demonstrate that to whether it's
Yeah.
municipalities or independently owned companies or sponsor backed businesses or the large fleet, the large publicly traded fleet. So demonstrating those reasons is certainly a big part of our approach, but just listening to the customer. Like
Mm,
our sales approach is extremely consultative. We're
mm.
not walking in there day one saying, I want to rent you a truck. Of course, we would like to rent you a truck at some point, or sell you
Yeah.
one of our assets. But the reality is we just need to understand what's happening in your business. And are you tight on capital? Or I'm trying to grow, or I'm growing through acquisition, or you know what? I'm just getting a ton of pressure from constituents that my service level isn't what it needs to be.
Mhm.
And then we can shape our solution to meet whatever need that they have. But that is our approach. And we want to have transparency with the customers. We'll talk about tech, but how do we leverage tech to just let people make the best decision possible for their fleet? And we don't view it as I'm going to come in and just you're going to rent your entire fleet, day one. We want to be a part of the solution. If that is the solution, great. But we're here to kind of support whatever business initiative they have.
Yeah, I like that. And I think, we've talked to a lot of rental companies last year. The number one thing, the number one challenge opportunity that we're hearing going to 2026 is they want to grow more. And that's obvious, but not always the case, right? There's times in rental that there was not enough fleet. So you couldn't actually grow more. You want to be more efficient, more profitable. People are saying they want to grow in 2026. When you're thinking about your growth strategy, you come from a sales background. How do you get new leads, new logos? Is it a sales team? Is it your marketing? And what's your number one go-to sort of strategy for growing new logos for your business to kind of go
Yeah.
into this year?
Yeah, good question, Kyle. Honestly, it's a combination of all of those things. When
Yeah.
the business started without a ton of salespeople, it was a lot of heavy efforts around marketing. We were early adopters of digital marketing.
Hmm.
When the company, we kind of combined that with an outside sales approach, where we're directly out there with the customers and have a group of folks that cover geographies. We have folks that cover specific segments, like national accounts, like the big publicly traded companies that are focused there. And then, candidly, we work with partners across US and Canada. We are a big purchaser of equipment, but we're also a big service provider. We do all of this virtually. You said earlier, we got
Mm,
60 people, but we manage a fleet of, a couple of thousand assets across US and Canada, but we do it out of two locations. So the OEMs that
mm,
supply us equipment are our support out there in the field, and they do the work on our equipment. And our those sales folks are also part of our strategy because they're out there sometimes touching the local customer maybe more frequently than we are. And we can certainly they can let us know that, hey, this customer needs a rental unit. I'm trying to sell them a new unit, but can you help support their business? And we'll do that and have programs for those folks.
Interesting. So you're really, I would say asset light because you own a bunch of assets, but you're like corporate overhead is light in the sense you don't have you've got 2 locations, 60 people, but even your sales staff is everybody in a sense, right? Because when someone's fixing a truck on
Yep,
site, they know you guys, you know your reputation for 24 years. If it feels right, they can recommend a rental, right, with you
you
as
got it.
well. So it's you've sort of built a partnership network as part of this too.
You got it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Critical part to the company's history of growth.
Yeah.
We started 24 years ago, rented trucks in Texas, and that's actually where it started. And we're based in Tampa. And someone wanted to rent trucks in Iowa. And the question was like, oh, how are we going to do that?
Yeah.
And so we needed a network. And so we partnered with the folks that supplies the equipment. Has worked out really, really well for us and well for them because we're a big service customer and giving them access to trucks that they don't have on a daily basis.
And going back to the kind of the consultative sales pitch, et cetera, what is like, if I'm a potential customer or prospect and I'm saying, "Hey, I own all this equipment, you're telling me to rent, why should I even consider renting? Why would that even make sense to me?"
Sure. We try to take a step even further up the chain from that is just understanding the business initiatives. We can get to the fleet piece, but I
Mm,
really understand like what are you working on
yeah.
from a business strategy? Because not everyone has acquisition, as forefront. Maybe someone's got organic growth
Mhm.
forefront, or maybe they are just challenged from a capital perspective. And so we start there and then we kind of get into the fleet. And specifically, when we get into the fleet, we're talking about repairs and maintenance expense. How long are you keeping your assets? What does your uptime look like? What do you do with an asset that's 9 years old that you're about to replace and you need to replace an engine? Are you replacing that engine and keeping the truck? And then what do you do when the new truck arrives? And so those are the discussions that we get into with the customers. And we try to get it ultimately distill it down into a math problem where we can make it
Mm,
black and white for it to make sense for them to rent or not.
yeah.
But every customer is a little different. We have folks that are like, hey, I am to your point, rental companies want to grow. We've got waste haulers or logistics companies that are saying, look, I'm ready to grow, but I don't know if this volume I'm getting is sustainable. So do I really want to buy a $400,000 asset with a little bit of uncertainty? Is that volume going to stick? And so we allow them to kind of work their way into that by renting an asset and then maybe ultimately buying that asset if the organic growth is sticking, or they buy a company and maybe the assets of the company they acquired weren't exactly the up to snuff in terms of what they want from a quality, safety, et cetera. And so we support a lot of opportunities like that as well.
Yeah. I like that. You're not coming in saying, "Here, rent. Here's the button. Click sign to pay the rent." And it's like, no, you talk about what you're going as a business. And I imagine you probably find that there's a lot of cases it doesn't make sense to rent, and you're not going to force that, right?
Yeah, we're not going to force that, but we know that if we do a great job of educating the customer on all the different ways in which you can run, you're going to have those scenarios that you need it. Now, when we go out and talk to a lot of folks on the municipal sector, which is a big part of our client base, a lot of them are challenged capitally, challenged from technicians, laborers, et cetera. And, their capital cycles just aren't as consistent. Or maybe they had a bunch of capital one year, bought a bunch of
Yeah.
assets. Now they're all kind of expiring at the same time. They don't have replacement. And we find a lot of those scenarios. Maybe the reason to rent isn't glaring and blinking lights that they should rent because that's just
Yeah.
not something that's happened. But it's pretty glaring that we have a pretty good offering to help
Yeah.
them overcome that.
Very good. Well, I want to talk about technology. You mentioned to me earlier that that's at the forefront of your strategy, which makes me happy because I like talking about technology. Why,
Sure.
why is technology important to the big truck rental? How do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I'd say we think about it in a couple areas. One is we think about it internally and how can we leverage it to scale our business efficiently. I think when you think about our business of having a couple thousand assets and 60 folks to do, we've done a pretty good job of leveraging tech to do that. And the other way we think about it is how do we take that technology and help it put it in front of our customer for them to make the best business decision. So a couple maybe examples of that is internally heavy users of systems and processes and automation automating things from order to cash is a huge focus for us. But when you think about managing the fleet across us and Canada, everyone's got a GPS unit on the truck. but we've been leveraging AI for years. A lot of talk about AI, what does it actually do, and how folks are leveraging it. But we've been leveraging predictive maintenance analytics for years at BTR, and that helps us keep our trucks running while they're in the hands of our customers. Because when they're renting an asset, that's the last thing they want is the truck to be down. And so our team, if you walked into our office, it looks a little like NASA setup, and the guys and gals are managing the fleet that way,
Mm,
leveraging that information to keep the trucks running and proactively communicating with the customer. And so those are some of the ways internally we leverage it. And then externally with the customers is about how do we give them visibility into their rental assets. I've heard on the podcast before, and I love to talk about, kind of good revenue versus bad revenue, from a rental perspective.
mhm.
As we're trying to change the way the industry looks at ownership, we want to make sure they're getting a return on their rental investment. That they're not renting an asset that's not being utilized on their site. And so we want to be fully transparent with these are the assets you're renting. Here's how long they've been running from an hours perspective. And really, should you be renting that asset or not? And so we launched a customer portal this past year. And that is a big focus of that portal is just giving them that visibility. And candidly, they can get that visibility across their entire rental fleet from BTR. It doesn't matter if you sit in one central office in Houston and have assets in every state, or you're a local operation that has that. We wanted to be able to have visibility for folks with large operations.
Yeah. Well, warms my heart to hear how much you guys are embracing technology, internally and externally. On the internal side, I'm thinking about I worked at Uber before this, and we had the same setup, like several different offices, but we're really far away from the end driver. So we had all these
Yeah,
data points. You're watching maps and utilization, and
got
we ran the whole business off of spreadsheets and maps. And with your two offices and thousands of assets everywhere in U.S. and Canada, you're forced to use technology internally,
you
right?
got
Like
it.
you have no choice. You're not in the field directly face to face every time. You have to run it, remotely in a sense. And it sounds like you've been able to lean into that to scale your business.
Absolutely. Lean into that and then lead into our partners. That technology, when we're using it to manage the fleet, helps us work with our partners to give them
Yeah,
the right information of, hey, this truck is coming into the shop. This is what we need done to the truck. So we're giving them the heads up and then leveraging tech to kind of manage it through the process, hold our partners accountable to certain KPIs, hold ourselves accountable to KPIs. But that allows us, you asked me the question earlier about, like reasons for rental and what's the business's
hmm
transition. The technology we leverage allows us to do that because we're taking that information from the customer. And so we've got real time access to whether it's utilization or reasons for rent or customer type. We have all that information at our fingertips at all times.
yeah. And the other part is related to your customer. So you've taken a view of we're going to be extremely transparent. We're going to show you everything in the customer portal, et cetera. What's been the impact or benefit of that? You guys taking this view that like you're going to surface the data, you're going to be transparent, you're going to put it in the customer's hands. Has there been ROI, or can you sense what the impact of the customer portal or sort of this
Yeah.
just transparent sort of view of things? I mean, how does that
It's
impact your business?
it's trust. We talk
Yeah.
about, the people on the team and we'll spend more time on that, but it's about that we sit across the table from somebody and they trust that we have their best interest. And we're able
hmm
to demonstrate that through the portal. And we have seen direct results, especially in the logistics business, where you've got Fortune 100 companies that have assets all over U.S. and Canada that they're renting. They're selecting us as their provider because renting a terminal tractor was maybe a category that they just didn't have any visibility to before. And in many cases, we're helping them reduce their rental spend by doing that. But for BTR, we're picking up the rental spend. We're
Yeah.
getting all the rental spend because of the value that we're providing.
That sort of embracing trust, transparency, is that something was that a hard decision to make where you're gonna surface all this data, or has that sort of been ingrained in the culture from the beginning, so it felt second nature?
Second nature. We
Yeah.
haven't always done that. We didn't always have
Yeah.
the capabilities to do that.
Yeah.
But our mantra at BTR is servant leadership, people serving
Mm.
people, whether you're serving the person next to you, you're serving the customer, serving our partners. Like we want to have a great relationship that is beneficial to both parties. So we've always believed in that. And now we just have the ability of providing some actual visibility into that using technology.
Yeah. I remember, at the American Rental Show 2 years ago, The Future of Rental, they had some of the United Rentals people, and they talked about their customer portal and why they effectively made it very transparent to the point that they will surface rentals that are they're not being utilized that you should off rent in a way that actually would harm United in the
Yeah.
short term. But they build trust. And I heard this phrase, long term greedy, where like you sort of like actually take hits on a lot of short term stuff because what you're building is trust with your customer who knows that you have your back and they're going to keep coming back to you. But United Rentals did that. And even for us, we started with online renting in 2020, 2021, and a lot of people didn't want to put pricing online. Rental pricing online was a hard thing for people to get around. It's accepted now.
Right.
But I got to a point, I was telling everyone, you need to put your prices online. Then we weren't for ourselves. I was like, I'm a hypocrite. We put our pricing it's on our homepage now, right? And it's one
Yeah.
price and it's very refreshing to be like, this is who we are. And we don't actually
Yeah.
negotiate on it. It's a very fair, simple price. And
Sure.
we've benefited from that too. Like it is a little challenging to put yourself out there because if you're wrong, if you're mispriced, you're not the right positioning, like you're going to
Sure.
feel that in your, in your P&L. But like, it is very refreshing to be like, I'm the same person with the same company to you as we would be the next company to the next company. And that
Yeah.
authenticity long-term, I think compounds.
I completely agree with that thought process. And yeah, that's why we took that viewpoint. And when you log into the portal, the first thing you see is a giant dashboard, with the assets that you're renting and how
Yeah.
many hours they're running over the course of the past week. And so you just get real time visibility to make that decision.
Yeah.
And we're comfortable with that. And especially in an industry where you're trying to, we serve two different industries. In the logistics space, it's a more penetrated industry, more mature rental market. And there we're taking market share with our value proposition.
Yeah.
And then the waste and recycling, it's more about building the trust that you should even rent a truck. And if I'm renting a truck, why am I renting? How long should I rent it? And so in both of those cases, our technology and the visibility is providing value to the customer for them to make the right decision.
Yeah. Using technology to build trust. You can use technology for a lot of things, but being able to do it to build trust with the customer, right, in ways you weren't able
Yes.
to do 10 years ago is
Yes.
really awesome. Another topic I want to ask you about is safety and automation. With automation, ties into the technology as well. Talk to me about safety in the waste industry. There's been older unsafe trucks. There's now newer, more
Sure.
automated equipment coming out. Talk to me about how that's been important for BTR.
Yeah, that's been a major initiative from the publicly traded companies all the way through municipalities to go from a rear load garbage truck that may have three folks on a truck to automated side loader that's one person in the
Mm,
and so the waste and recycling industry is ranked highly in terms of dangerous industries that are out there, and a
mm-hmm.
big focus from the National Waste and Recycling Association is how do we get off of that list. We don't want to be in the top 10 of that list. And automation is the key to that. And I would say that while it started with some municipalities and the big publicly traded companies, that's really, really expanded. And you look at our fleet, that makes up a majority of our fleet as well, is that conversion. So we're helping folks make that conversion from rear load to side load because that conversion is heavily capital intensive. And if you're automating an entire city and you talk about, I'm running a rear load garbage truck and now I want to have an automated truck, there's an ROI because you got one person in the cab. But you got to spend $400 or $450,000 on an automated side loader. It's not a cheap endeavor, even though the ROI is there. And so we've been able to help folks make that conversion or do it at a faster clip, as
Mm-hmm.
go to order trucks. The other piece I'd say, and I sit on the board of trustees for the National Waste and Recycling Association, so I will be in trouble if I don't talk about this message that you will see out there. But this is a real thing that our industry faces. Not only is there challenges in safety from a labor perspective, but there's also challenges with lithium-ion batteries. You've seen it on the news, but it's having a major impact on recycling facilities and collection vehicles, where these batteries are getting tossed into the waste truck, and the trucks are catching on fire, or fires at recycling facilities. So a huge effort to get them out of the waste stream and find alternative ways to get them collected. But that's something that's very important to the industry.
Yeah, that's awesome. So on the first point, you're talking about the traditional, dump trucks. You
Yeah,
got a driver, two people in the back, and they're kind of running back and forth. The new equipment is one driver and the sort of like a claw or something that
you got it. Yeah,
picks up.
got
Yeah,
an arm picks up the container at your house.
they just started in Atlanta, like in the last I don't know if it's you guys or not, but in the last few months, I've noticed it's shifted. So I look outside my house and it's cool. Like it's much
Yes.
safer and like, those guys run around. It's a tough job. And you have to imagine all the dangerous cars and this trash flying around. And, I've
Yes.
seen what you're talking about. It
Yeah.
transformed Atlanta in the last few months.
Yeah, extremely tough job to be on the back of the truck and hard to recruit folks and
Yeah.
hard to have longevity, in
Yeah.
that type of role. And when you have automation and you can be in the cab out of the elements, you can also attract a wider variety of folks that would be interested in that job. You
Yeah.
know, it's sitting there like you're playing a video game, operating this arm. It's a very
Yeah.
similar thing.
It's like
And
the claw,
yeah, yeah, you got
from
it.
Toy Story, the
Yes,
claw.
yes, I
Uh,
have two children, so I understand.
yeah. So, I imagine you guys are fronting the cost, buying this new equipment. It's more expensive than the old equipment. That allows local governments to get access to this in a way that they may not have had the capital to go purchase. Right. So because by the nature of being a rental company, you're actually able to push technology in a way that would
Yes.
get faster adoption than if the local governments had to buy it themselves. Is that fair?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And are your
Yeah.
customers asking for more of this? Are they like, "Man, this is awesome. Give me the latest and greatest." Like, are they very happy to see that you've got the latest technology?
Yeah, where we differ from maybe traditional rental businesses is our asset hold time is not very long. So those
Mm,
assets move out of our fleet within a couple of years. And so
mm,
we are constantly refreshing the fleet. And so we do have the latest and greatest from a technology perspective on the trucks from a collection piece. And then we allow our customers to also hook up their own technology, in cab technology. We have cameras around the truck, but some of our customers use in-cab technology from a camera perspective. We have it all set up so they can do whatever system they utilize. And so, by refreshing our fleet, make sure that and buying from leading brands, we make sure that we have the latest and greatest for folks to execute.
Was that an intentional decision to say, "We're gonna invest in new equipment, keep it for a short period of time, just so we always have the best product in market?" Is that a nature of your business, or is that something you decided to do as a company?
Um, a little bit of both. It is something we
Mm,
decided to do as a company, and that's what our customers are valuing. Many
yeah.
times they're renting because they need a piece of equipment, and they certainly don't want to rent a piece of equipment that's 7, 8 years old when their piece of equipment that was 7 or 8 years old just went down, and so they would like to have a newer piece of equipment. And for us, when you own that equipment for extended period of time, warranties run out, OpEx goes up on some of those trucks from a maintenance perspective, and so we just want to make sure that our customers are running, want to make sure our
Mhm.
costs are low, and basically allow us to execute more efficiently. And so it achieved both
Yeah.
of those things by doing it.
Awesome. I love to hear that. Well, now I understand, like, the crane, the
Yeah,
claw more often. I'm like, "Did something changed?" I don't know. Now I understand. Okay, last topic I wanna talk to you about is culture. You mentioned that a few times,
sure.
people serving people. Why is culture a competitive advantage for you guys or in rental? Tell me about how important your culture and your team is.
Yeah, it is the number one focus of the organization. Before we sat down here this morning, I was in an interview with someone. The executive team at BTR interviews every single person that is coming to this door, and the first thing we focus on is culture and
Mhm.
what does that actually mean. And a servant leader means that someone's willing to do the right thing. They have high character. Candidly, are they passionate about what they do? They're accountable to the results, and do they have high integrity? Those are the three things we're looking for in anyone that we're bringing on, because we have the long view in mind when we're
Mm,
working with our customers. We want to do the right thing. We're not cutting corners. We're helping support the customer, and so we want folks that have shown the ability to do that before, and we want folks to work together. And candidly, we have a lot of fun at the company. So if you spend any time in our office, we have a good time while we're here, and we've got that reputation in the industry that we're answering the phone no matter when you call, and we're people that you want to be around. And so we just have a big belief in that, and that has a positive impact on our customers, our partners, and our ability to attract and retain talent. As you know, running a company, you said 30 folks on the team. It can be challenging when you don't have the big corporate structure to say, hey, you do X, you get Y, you do Y, you get Z. But what I can tell you is that you're going to have a great time. You're going to do things that you've never done before. And we're going to give you opportunities to expand and have a heck of a lot of fun while you're doing it. And that's what we talk about when we attract folks to the company.
Yeah. Well, I like what you said is you take a long view of people and your organization.
Yep.
So you're not hiring necessarily the flashiest resume or where you went to, you went to Harvard Business School or any of that. You're hiring for integrity, for hard work, and then you train them and you teach them. They sort of ingrain into the culture and the industry over time, right? And you really focus on getting the right people in the door. What is that interview process like? How do you actually find? How do you source people like that? How do you vet them? It's one thing to say, we have a great culture. It's another thing to like make it a priority and actually do the work to build it because
Yeah.
it doesn't happen naturally. I mean, how do you actually find those people and get them in the door?
Yeah, great question. And if you're doing it all the time, because it is a full-time job of working
Yeah.
on the culture and ingraining the folks, but when you bring those folks on, every single person on the team is representing the culture in the community or with the customers or with partners. And so naturally, those are part of our recruiting channels that they're out
Mm,
talking to the company and how they enjoy being a part of the company. And so as we've built the company, we've been fortunate to attract a ton of folks by one being successful organization. People want to work for places that are doing really, really well, and they want to
yeah.
work for for people that are having success and people that they want to sit next to. We kind of call it passing the beer test. Someone you want to be with on the weekends. I see, in our office and even with my own team, these are folks that are hanging out outside of work. And so those
Hmm.
folks are out there attracting folks. So many times when we post a position, we've got folks that are coming to us right out of the gate saying, "Hey, I want to work at BTR. If you ever have an opportunity, give me a call." And then after that, if we can't find someone that way, we do have trusted recruiters that we use, but we are very deliberate about how we train the recruiters because that takes time and effort. So the
Yeah.
recruiters are spending time in our office, getting to know our culture, getting to know our people, and what we're looking for. And so those are the two ways in which we really go about it. We're looking for referrals and then leveraging good recruiters.
Yeah. So you mentioned it's culture is the most important thing. I mean, how much of your brain power or what percentage of your week are you thinking about organization, culture, team? You've now been the CEO for a year. So, I mean, how often are you thinking about it? I mean, is it 5%? Is it 90%? How much effort do you spend thinking about your team, culture, organization,
I would say it's ingrained in every single thing that we do.
everything you do?
So everything we do, every conversation that we have, you want to be intentional about it. And candidly, we just want to be humans and get to know the people that are working on our team and what do they want to
Yeah.
do? Where do they want to go? How can we help you do that? And we want that to be at Big Truck Rental. And sometimes we can lose people at Big Truck Rental. It doesn't happen often, but we're excited for folks, because if we can't provide the opportunity, but they've done really well,
Yeah.
we want them to be successful, like genuine vested interest in people. When you do that, people get excited to come
Yeah.
to work. And so you do that across the entire org. It takes every person kind of pulling the rope in the same direction to have a great culture.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you're very excited about leadership and or your organization and the people you brought on. How did you learn how to be a leader? How did you learn to be a CEO? How did you learn to, one sense, how to sell, how to write a P&L. That was the president stuff, but the CEO role is much around the team, right? And leading a team.
Sure.
How did you learn that? Did you learn from other people, reading books? I mean, how did that become ingrained into
Oof.
your style?
Right. Yeah. Good question. Honestly, I would say partly from my upbringing. I, just grew up a middle class kid in West Virginia, playing a lot of sports, leading my sports teams growing up, and just naturally kind of took that position as leadership. When I joined Rare Pacific, over 20 years ago, I would say I joined that company, which is a family-owned business, had a fantastic culture, and that's where I first learned about taking the time to hire people right, giving them opportunities, giving them a roadmap, but letting them do the work, and that was a big part of my learning there. And then I would say, I do spend a lot of time reading, a lot of
Mm,
time reading. I'd say as president and CEO, and I spend a lot of time reading, a lot of time just talking to other companies. And when you bring people on too from other organizations, you get a lot of insight of what not to do. That's also
yeah.
that's
Right.
also helpful. And listen, we take a quarterly survey of every single person on the team, net promoter score, and we're scoring extremely high there. And we're looking for candid feedback, and we get candid feedback,
Mm,
and then we actually act on it. You can get feedback, but you don't act on it. No one's going to believe that you really care about that. So that's extremely important. And then, fortunately, the size of the company, I really get an opportunity to interact with every single person. And so throughout my year, I set up time on my calendar for every person when they hit their anniversary or when they just start. Day one, they're going to meet with me and talk about the culture and what we're focused on. Every single person's got a book, about our culture, what we stand for, the values that we stand for. And
Yeah.
that's something we talk about on a consistent basis. And so, as you mentioned, it is an ongoing job. And so it's just got to be a part of everyday life at BTR.
Yeah, I think what I'm hearing from you is like, how do you become a great leader? How do you build a great culture? You just make it the most important thing, and you're gonna make mistakes, right? But
Yes.
like it's sort of trial by error. Like you just make it the thing. I'm gonna talk to my team. I'm gonna learn. I'm gonna read books. I'm gonna put the people first. I've been reading a book. You probably read it. Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek.
Yep.
Like almost done, but like he talks about, the so goes the leader, so goes the people, so goes the people, so goes the company sort of thing. And it
You
really
got it.
starts with the leadership and it starts then goes to the people. And if you don't get that sort of right, then the results don't matter. Because long term, if you take a long term view, like you're gonna cut corners, you're gonna get people looking out for themselves and the trust erodes over time and
You got it.
your performance erodes over time, right? So um, you mentioned multiple times taking a long term view, right? And
Yeah.
I think one way you do it is you build the culture with a long term view.
Yeah. Every year we have a book, and this year I'm going to give a shout out to my man John Gordon. Power of a
Cool.
Positive Team is
All
the
right.
book that we will read this year as an organization. John's a great guy, does a lot of work with sports teams. We actually had him come speak to the company a couple years ago, and he's got a lot of great books around culture, team, servant leadership, and so we're about to roll that out to the group as that'll be a focus for the year.
Awesome. I wrote down. I won't be in your book club, but I'll read it.
Okay, got it.
Well, thanks for coming on today, Zach. Last question I like to ask people: best career advice you've gotten that's helped shape your success and what you're doing today.
Oh, you know what? Always stand up for what you believe in, and just being an honest person. Sometimes that means making very difficult decisions,
Mm,
but just stand up for what you believe in and don't compromise on that. Don't compromise on character, and do the right thing, and that will play off in the long haul. So that is best advice I've ever received.
I love it. Well, my dad always said, uh, "Do the right thing, treat other people the way they want to be treated," sort of thing,
You got
right? And the golden rule sort of thing. So I could tell integrity is very important to you. Your people are very important to you. So and technology, right? So
yes,
that to serve that. So anyway, Zach, it's been fun having you on. Thanks for being a listener to the Rental Roundtable, and
yeah,
thanks again for coming on today.
yeah. Thanks for having me, Kyle, and looking forward to seeing more podcasts, and hopefully we can outrank Joe here by the
Yeah,
end
we'll
of it.
see. All right, I'll put the pressures on. All right, thanks, Zach.
Appreciate it.